You know that feeling? And I'm guessing you know it all too well, honestly. That constant, just gnawing hunger for more.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone knows that feeling.
Right. And I don't just mean standing in front of the fridge at midnight,
Yeah.
though guilty. But I mean that deep, persistent psychological ache.
Yeah, the existential kind.
Exactly. The drive for more information, more success, a more fulfilling daily routine, or just this vague, lingering sense that there is an experience out there that you're somehow missing.
Like a primal drive that just simply refuses to let you rest.
Yeah, and that brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. Today we are unpacking the architecture of a fascinating audio source on the 35th gene key.
Which is a pretty wild ride, honestly.
It really is. It maps out this transformational path through three distinct stages of human experience. So it begins in that raw state of, well, hunger, and then evolves into this dynamic state of adventure, and ultimately resolves into a mind-bending state they call boundlessness.
And, the goal today is to really look at the mechanics behind these transitions. Because this isn't about eradicating our primal drives.
Right, which never works anyway.
Exactly. Instead, it's about looking at how we can sympathize and collaborate with those urges. Because that collaboration is what actually allows us to dismantle the self-made traps we build.
Which is so liberating. So let's get into the foundation of that, which this framework identifies as the shadow state, which is hunger.
Yeah, and when we talk about hunger in this context, we aren't talking about like a caloric deficit.
No, not at all. It encompasses the drive for power, the hunger for love, for connection, for truth.
It even extends to the drive to escape our past, or the ultimate hunger for like unity and the divine.
It is raw, unfiltered desire. And the source points out that it's the underlying frequency of dissatisfaction that pushes a whole species forward.
Wait, so the shadow label isn't some sort of moral judgment. I think that's important to clarify.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It really just represents an unrefined state of awareness where the hunger controls the organism rather than the organism utilizing the hunger.
I want to look at that shadow label for a second, actually, because the instinctive reaction is to view a shadow as a flaw to be corrected, something bad.
Sure, it's something you want to get rid of.
But if we look at the biological mechanics, I see it more like, well, think of a really rich chocolate cake.
Okay, I'm listening.
If you take a bite or two, it's euphoric. It gives you energy. It feels great. But if you sit down and eat the entire cake in one sitting, you're going to be incredibly sick.
Oh, undeniably.
Isn't this shadow of hunger functioning the same way? Like we need a microscopic dose of it to build the resilience of our humanity without letting the full, infection of excess take over.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. And the framework explicitly relies on this idea of homeopathy.
Oh, interesting. Break that down for me.
Well, in homeopathy, you use a minuscule dose of a substance to trigger a healing response in the body. If you flood your system with the full substance, whether that's an excess of food, alcohol, power, validation.
You just overwhelm everything.
Exactly. You overwhelm your nervous system. Your endocrine system literally crashes under the weight of those stress hormones, and you pay the price through physical and emotional exhaustion.
But the other extreme is dangerous too, right? Like complete starvation creates a totally different pathology.
Oh, 100%. Consider the path of pure asceticism, like the Puritans. When someone attempts to completely starve themselves of human desire, they don't actually eliminate the hunger.
They just redirect it.
Precisely. Starving the self often morphs into this insidious addiction to purity. You become intoxicated by your own discipline, your own superiority.
Which ironically walls you off from the very connection you were trying to achieve.
Exactly. You end up more isolated than ever.
There's this brilliant historical perspective on this balance from the late Hungarian writer and philosopher Hampus Belle.
Oh, the wine metaphor. I love this part.
It's so good. He argued that there is an exact mathematical measure for drinking wine. The mechanism he proposed was to take the physical substance just to the absolute edge of intoxication.
Right, where you barely feel the chemical effect.
Yeah, you sit right on that delicate biological threshold. Then you let a laugh or a smile from someone you love act as the final sip, basically, that pushes you over the edge into true intoxication.
It's a staggering way to view our daily interactions, isn't it? It completely shifts the burden of satiation from the physical substance, the wine, to the social connection.
It really asks you to look at how you live. Like, can you calibrate your life so that you ingest just enough of your primal drive to stay engaged, but rely on presence and human connection for the actual fulfillment?
Which is a great question to ask the listener right now. Think about your own default settings for a moment. How are you processing your own hungers?
Yeah. Are you letting the beast run rampant until you're burned out?
Mm.
Are you starving yourself and wearing your denial like some kind of badge of honor?
Or are you finding that delicate homeopathic edge?
Because if we fail to calibrate this drive, the source says we inevitably default to the 35th gene keys programming partner, which is the fifth shadow of boredom.
And boredom is fascinating from a neurological standpoint.
It really is. Like, why do we get bored?
Well, when uncalibrated hunger drives us, our brains optimize for efficiency. We find a specific route that provides satiation, a certain food, a behavioral reaction, a specific type of entertainment, and we just lock it in.
We hit the same neurological buttons over and over, expecting the same reward.
Right, but the brain habituates.
We build a tolerance.
Precisely, and that habituation is what we experience as boredom. We get trapped in these cyclical loops of behavior.
What strikes me here is the spatial reality of our lives versus our perception of it. The source talks about how if you map out a circle with a half-mile radius around your current location,
Just a half mile.
it's just a half mile. The amount of unique biological, social, and environmental data within that tiny perimeter is staggering. There is enough unique stimuli right there to occupy an entire human lifetime.
Yet we perceive it as mundane.
Exactly. We filter it out because it's known, and therefore it's not perceived as a source of intense satiation.
But we have to make a vital distinction here. The mechanism of repetition itself isn't the enemy.
Right. Routine is necessary.
Yeah. Biological and societal rhythms absolutely require repetition. You have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to go to work.
The trap isn't the routine, it's the staleness of the awareness observing the routine.
Mm-hmm.
The framework suggests our awareness has to maintain a zingy quality.
I like that word, singy.
Yeah, because objectively, doing the same thing is never actually the exact same event. The atmospheric pressure is different, your cellular makeup is regenerated.
You are literally a day older.
Exactly. Boredom is an internal failure to process the subtle variables in a repetitive environment.
And altering that internal processing is what transitions us into the gift phase of the 35th gene key, which they call adventure.
Okay, so how do we get to adventure?
Well, to activate this, we have to look at the psychological structures we've built, which the source refers to as silos.
Silos, like on a farm.
Sort of. A silo is a self-contained enclosure that isolates its contents. It serves only itself. And we compartmentalize our reality into these silos to feel secure and to, efficiently manage our hungers.
Oh, I see. So our political beliefs, our silos, our professional identities, our domestic routine.
Even the specific vocabulary we use, they're all silos.
So the activation of adventure requires what the text calls silo busting.
Right.
Now, I have to bring up a pop culture reference here. The movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah. Where he says yes to everything.
Right. He decides to aggressively say yes to every single request or opportunity that crosses his path. And, as a comedic premise, it works. But as a psychological strategy for silo busting, the host in me has to push back. That is terrible, reckless advice.
Oh, completely.
Like giving away all your money to a stranger just because they ask doesn't organically bridge a silo. It just detonates your boundaries and leaves you totally exposed.
Yeah, we aren't looking for self-sabotage under the guise of adventure.
Exactly. So what does healthy silo busting actually look like?
Well, demolishing a boundary isn't the same as building a bridge. Tree silo busting is an osmotic process. It's about tuning your nervous system to listen to your environment and allowing disparate spheres of your life to just organically intersect.
So you maintain your structural integrity, but you open a valve.
Yes, it's the micro adjustments. The source gives a great example. Putting a bird feeder outside your home office window.
Okay, yeah. You haven't destroyed your work silo, but you've bridged it with the local ecology.
Exactly. Or, changing the dynamic at the grocery store. Instead of running the standard customer transaction script, you learn the cashier's name and ask a genuine question.
You introduce a human connection variable into a previously automated loop.
Those micro adjustments interrupt the habituation we talked about earlier. But this brings up a massive operational paradox in the text.
Oh, the patience thing.
Yeah, the 35th gift of adventure is intrinsically paired with the 5th gift, which is patience. And on the surface, those two states seem diametrically opposed.
I really struggled with that pairing initially. Adventure implies forward momentum, risk, kinetic energy. Patience implies waiting in a dentist's office.
Yeah, it feels like a suspension of momentum.
So how does halting our momentum generate adventure?
Because it forces a reset of your awareness. Think about it. If you are rushing, you are simply operating under the shadow of hunger again. You're prioritizing the destination over the current variable.
Oh, wow.
Patience is the active mechanism that allows you to notice the data within that half-mile radius we talked about. It isn't passive waiting. It is the active suspension of the hunger drive.
There's a very specific protocol for this in the framework that sounds simple, but is honestly incredibly difficult to execute in real life.
Oh, the interruption protocol.
Yeah. If you are deeply focused on a task, deep in a productivity silo, and someone interrupts you to speak, the protocol is to physically stop what you are doing, turn, and give them your absolute undivided attention for those few moments.
It's so hard to do.
It really is. Because you are intentionally overriding the dopamine loop of past completion. You acknowledge the homeopathic dose of the shadow, like you feel the irritation and the hunger to finish your work.
But you deploy patience to prioritize the human variable. The adventure is the spontaneous exchange of energy that happens in that pause.
It's a complete inversion of how we typically guard our time. I mean, I want to challenge the listener here.
Right.
Take a moment today and run a diagnostic on your own routines.
Where are your walls thickest?
Exactly. Like if your teenagers play music you usually despise, the impulse is to retreat to a quiet room. The silo-busting approach is to pause, step into their acoustic environment, and actively listen for the appeal.
It requires patience to cross that bridge, for sure. But it prevents the staleness of your own aesthetic silo.
And sustaining this practice, this patient, everyday integration of silos, the source says this fundamentally alters our internal state.
It does. It prepares the physical and energetic body for the final, most complex expression of the 35th gene key, which is the CD, or the ultimate state of boundlessness.
Okay, this is where we need to unpack the underlying mechanics carefully, because the framework crosses into some heavy genetic and metaphysical territory here.
Yeah, it gets a little sci-fi.
It really does.
Yeah.
It utilizes the structure of our DNA to map this state. It talks about codon rings, which are essentially chemical groupings in our genetics.
Right. A codon is a sequence of 3 nucleotides that corresponds to a specific amino acid. They usually operate in clusters or families.
But the 35th gene key is biologically unique, right?
Very. It is entirely isolated in the genetic code, functioning like a solitary island, with the exception of one specific pairing, a start codon, which acts as the green light for genetic translation.
And its structural isolation is crucial because it sits apart from the typical genetic families. It creates a sort of biological vacuum.
Exactly. It is intensely driven to connect across vast divides because of its inherent isolation. In this framework, that genetic anomaly isn't just a physical trait. It acts metaphorically and energetically as a wormhole.
Now, as someone who closely follows these esoteric systems, I track the logic of an energetic vacuum-seeking connection. But the framework pushes this into a highly literal physical domain.
It does make some bold claims.
It suggests these wormholes allow for the bending of time, bringing the future into the past. It even correlates this isolated gene key with a physical capacity for human flight and levitation.
I know, it's a lot to wrap your head around.
I mean, I find myself hitting a wall here regarding the logistics. Wait, are we talking about a psychological expansion that just feels like slight? Or is the text actually suggesting that activating this start codon triggers a literal physiological mutation that defies gravity?
Well, it demands a nonlinear view of evolution, you know?
Yeah.
The architecture here views the 35th gene key as an ancient biological relic. It functions almost like a genetic appendix.
Like something we used to use but don't anymore.
Exactly. It suggests this code is a remnant from a prehistorical epoch referenced often as the time before the Great Flood, when human consciousness and physical form were vastly more integrated and less dense.
Which points to the ancient I Ching hexagram associated with this key, which is easy progress. The imagery there is the sun rising effortlessly over the earth.
Exactly. The sun acting as the ultimate wormhole, distributing energy across the vacuum of space. The framework asserts that our universal fascination with flight isn't just a byproduct of imagination.
Right.
When you have a vivid dream of flying and you wake up with the somatic memory of gliding through the air, it frames that not as a random neurological firing, but as a future memory.
A future memory, that's wild.
Yeah, it is an echo from a dimension or a future evolutionary state where that genetic sequence is fully activated.
So it frames our cultural obsessions as evidence of this dormant blueprint, like the massive global appetite for flying superheroes.
Or the wuxia genre in Chinese cinema, where martial artists effortlessly glide across bamboo forests and rooftops.
The hypothesis is that we aren't just entertaining ourselves, We are collectively yearning for an evolutionary capacity that is sitting locked inside our DNA. We're hungering to become boundless again.
It is the ultimate manifestation of silo busting. You are breaking the final silo of physical gravity and temporal linearity.
Wow.
The deepest drive of the human organism isn't the acquisition of resources, ultimately. It is the fundamental urge to merge with the divine, to bypass the friction of the material world.
I mean, the scale of that evolutionary timeline is massive. But even if we bracket the literal physics of human levitation, because, I'm not floating out of my chair anytime soon. But even if we put that aside, the immediate practical application of easy progress remains incredibly potent for your daily life.
It provides immense psychological relief, honestly. If the overarching trajectory of our genetic code is boundlessness, if the river of our evolution is absolutely guaranteed to merge with the ocean, then the frantic, anxious forcing of our daily lives becomes unnecessary.
You don't have to push the river. You can stop trying to micromanage the current.
Exactly.
We've mapped a massive arc today. We deconstructed the raw, gnawing drive of human hunger, reevaluating it not as an evil to be purged, but as a mechanism to be carefully dosed.
We looked at how habituation breeds boredom and how the active deployment of patience can bust open our daily silos.
And we followed that genetic hunger all the way to the ancient, dormant blueprint of human flight.
It really contextualizes our daily anxieties. The framework actually concludes with a perspective that beautifully grounds this entire journey, pulling from the poet Mary Oliver.
Oh, I love this quote. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves.
That line fundamentally rewrites our relationship with the shadow of hunger. The drive isn't a demon to be starved in the ascetics desert. It is a biological instrument, a soft animal that simply requires patient guidance. And as the poem continues, it reminds us that while we obsess over our perceived failings, the world continues its massive rhythmic cycles. The world constantly offers itself to your imagination, calling to you, announcing your place in the family of things.
Which leaves us with a final thought to consider. We spent this deep dive looking at how our uncalibrated hunger traps us and how our deepest genetic desire is for the boundless freedom of flight.
Right.
But look at our modern world. Look at our obsession with virtual reality, airplanes, the metaverse, digital escapism. If the 35th gene key is truly an isolated wormhole in our DNA, waiting to organically activate our boundlessness, is it possible that our entire technological obsession is just a misdirected attempt to satiate that hunger?
Oh, that's a brilliant point.
Are we desperately building machines and virtual worlds to achieve a state of flight that our own biology is already designed to do?
It begs the question, what happens when we stop building outward and start unlocking what is already within?
Something for you to chew on as you navigate the silos of your day. See you next time.